Hello, welcome to episode 2 of my podcast, Fast Asleep, Wide Awake, where I'm going to continue on the theme of finding inner safety. And I have to say, as I record this today, I've had to really work on finding the inner safety to sit here, plonk my butt down, and actually start recording this because there's been some trepidation. I've been a little nervous. And part of that is related to this kind of, well, is it worth doing this? Is anyone going to actually listen to this? And then I'm reminded of the quote, and I'm pretty sure it was Mother Teresa who said, "If you can't feed 100 mouths, feed one." So I'm going to keep going with this in the hope that my words can make a difference to at least one person, can help to ease your journey so that you find that inner safety, you find that grace that enables you to navigate whatever challenges you're going through in your life, and so that you can sleep at night. Because the overarching theme, of course, of this podcast is being able to sleep safely and deeply and wake up with energy and vitality. But another reason why I found it a little difficult to sit here this morning and summon up the energy and the courage to record is because it's been a challenging week. So if any of you are watching this podcast, you might see some vibrant colors behind me, my neighbor's house, very blue sky, huge fluffy clouds. And out here we have 92% humidity. So I do look a bit sweaty, I know. And it's very hot. I know it's very hot in the UK at the moment as well. Um, but right now I'm in the tropics. I'm in Guyana, which is in South America, if you don't know. And I'm in my childhood home visiting my elderly mother. And I'll say something about that in a minute. And I'm out here visiting her, and I've been here for a week, and it's been challenging. And normally I get here and I sleep really well. And traveling from the UK to South America, normally the impact on my circadian rhythm isn't as great. You know, when you travel out west, it's not as impactful on the circadian rhythms and on the pineal. So normally I sleep pretty well when I get here, but this time it's taken me 5 days and nights to adjust and be able to sleep. So I was waking up in the night, and even though I have my tools, which include my favorite cooling bamboo blanket, I even have a biohacking tool which emits radiation, which can attune my sleep into deep delta wave. I didn't use it though because I wanted to observe the impact on my sleep. But so I have all sorts of tools. I even have a physio ice pack, which I keep in a little fridge outside of my bedroom. We normally have cold drinks there, and in the freezer I keep one of those squishy physio packs. So if I wake up during the night, I can take that and I can put it on my stomach or I can put it on my head, and that helps to cool the body down and I can sleep. So I've been using my tools. I've been using my meditations, my visualizations, all of my techniques. But I've had 5 nights where I haven't felt so good. And I want to share with you what's been going on. And this is related to this theme of finding inner safety, this mini series where I started out in episode 1 talking about the fact that I have noticed in the decades of doing my work that there is a connection between feeling safe and being able to sleep deeply. And when I talk about feeling safe, I don't talk about having a perfect life and money in the bank and a perfect relationship and a job that you love and teenagers who are behaving and parents who are healthy and secure and well. All of that helps. What I am talking about is a deep rooted sense of inner safety where no matter what is going on in the world around you, you are able to come back into yourself, into a state of, we're using, this is a well-used phrase these days, nervous system regulation. We're able to come back to a state of nervous system regulation, regardless of what is happening in our external world. We are able to self-regulate so that when you put your head on the pillow at night, you can sleep, regardless of the external circumstances. So I have been myself working on this in my personal life. And those of you who know my work, and those of you who are listening to my podcasts, and you might be listening haphazardly, and you might have landed on episode 2, having listened to others, but you might now know that I teach not just from or I share rather, if I can say that. Yeah, I share not just from my professional experience of over 30 years of having worked in so many different professional environments, corporate environments, schools, professional athletes, people recovering from cancer. My professional experience is extensive, but my work doesn't just come from that, or my background in neuroscience, neurophysiology, but it comes from my lived experience. My lived experience. And so it comes from the heart. It is, I would say, a spiritual mission for me. You know, some of my nervousness isn't just about who's going to listen, who the heck's going to listen to this, but it's also about if I share honestly and if I share from my deep rooted beliefs that we are each here on a mission to discover what we are here to do and have a sense of purpose. And to do that, to find the sense of safety, inner safety, that enables us to live authentically with meaning and purpose. And that means finding this sense of inner safety. Then we can live our best lives. We can live more vibrant lives. We can sleep more deeply. Kind of lost the train of that sentence there, but I hope you get the gist of what I'm saying, because part of my nervousness today was, can I be real? Can I be honest? Can I really talk about the murkiness of my life? And actually, yeah, today, 6 days into my trip to South America, I want to share my story with you because it's been really messy and hard and challenging and heartbreaking. And I have had to go in deep to find the roots of inner safety and to learn how to self-regulate. So I'm going to share my story with you today. But before I do so, I want to just invite you to think about your own relationship with safety, inner safety. So inner safety, as distinct from what is happening out there in the external world with parents, children, finances, professional, our work, um, our relationships with our friends, our colleagues, what is happening. Let's just broaden the circle. Let's think about what's happening in the world at the moment. And as I record this podcast, there is devastation and horror. There are nations at war. There are people who are in such heartbreaking and horrific situations and conditions. And we only need to switch on the news or look at social media and we can find out what's happening in those worlds. And we may not ourselves be personally in those situations, but we are a microcosm of a macrocosm. We are a small cell in the body of mankind and what's happening in the world and humanity. So each of us will be experiencing it in some small way, in some challenging way at the moment, a version of what is happening out there in those macro situations, in those really hard, tough situations. So, you know, even while I'm sitting here recording this episode, I'm not in my UK home where normally it would be quiet. and very peaceful. And there might be aromatherapy oils and my amazing dog, Mira, the miraculous, sitting at my feet. It's actually pretty noisy here. There are sirens. It's out here in the tropics, but Guyana is far from idyllic. It's noisy there. I'm hoping that the technology that I'm using today and that Rich, my lovely tech guy, is going to help as he cleans up this episode and this recording. We can screen out some of the external noise, but I'm having to speak while there's someone cutting grass. My mother is crying out every now and then to the carers. There are police sirens, and I'm extremely hot. And I'm having to keep coming back to my own sense of inner self-regulation so that I can deliver my message today and I can do this recording. So I want you to think about your sense of inner safety. And I wonder whether you've ever thought about it before. And if you listen to the previous episode, I would recommend you go back and listen to it, where I talked about, I'm a sleep expert and I'm talking about safety, and I wanted to write about safety decades ago, but the world wasn't ready for it. Publishers weren't ready for it. But then during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, the world became ready because everyone was going through their own challenges and running around not feeling safe. So suddenly safety hit the agenda, psychological safety, and the book got commissioned. And something that I wanted to talk about decades ago, suddenly it was acceptable. So now we can talk about safety, but I do want to still urge you to think about your sense of inner safety. And I'm kind of rifting here as I record this. I sat here with a notebook before this recording and I thought, I'm going to write some notes, but I didn't, because I just thought, no, I'm not here to perform. What I'm sharing with you comes from my heart. And actually, right now, it's wonderful because the lawnmowers from next door have stopped. I don't know how long that will go on for, but no, it started up again. But I have no notes. I'm rifting. I'm rifting even while I sit in this space of far from perfect, far from paradise, tropical paradise, far from kind of inner bliss, I have to say. So, what is your relationship with inner safety? And you might not know. And with this mini series, I hope to share with you information that will help you to hone your understanding of what it means to feel safe. Because I think there are 4 broad categories that I want to share with you today. We might go around in a state of conscious inner safety, consciously. I feel consciously safe. Yeah, I feel pretty good. So when I got to the airport on, I can't even remember what day it was when I traveled, I got to the airport, I was feeling great. I arrived well in time, enough time to have breakfast, send a few messages, speak to my daughter before I got on the plane, and generally soak up the airport vibe and look forward to the journey. I was looking forward to it. And I was feeling consciously safe. And actually, I wear and have been wearing a bit of tech. I'm not on commission, but thank you, technology. I have this wearable tech that enables me to look at some data even while I'm on the go. And I was able to also look at my sleep data when I woke up the morning of my travel and go, wow, I slept really well. I was getting up really early, 4:30. Because being a control freak, I want to make sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed. And I could see that my data was saying, yep, you slept well. You felt safe to sleep. And I'm at the airport and my nervous system is regulated, my heart rate variability, the data is saying, you're flying, Marina, you're relaxed. You're not in deep restoration, but you're relaxed. And then several hours later, everything has gone well with my travel, and I arrive nighttime in the tropics, sort of 2 a.m. UK time when I got here, and I see my mother, and I feel the vibe. I notice the deterioration, not just in my mother's health. She was asleep. It's the first time since years of coming out here that My mother wasn't awake to greet me. She's 88 and she has Alzheimer's. And I have noticed in this week that her Alzheimer's has progressed. How can I say progressed? That's the terminology, isn't it? She has deteriorated so that it takes her probably 5 minutes longer to chew and swallow one mouthful. She has what's called dysphagia, which is what happens when Alzheimer's is advancing. And neurologically, the brain centers that are involved in gustation, chewing and swallowing, they start to, the neurological pathways are being eroded. So she's forgetting how to swallow and she's forgetting how to chew properly. And so it's taking her longer, but she wasn't awake. She was asleep. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to unpack and then shower. This is new. Normally she would be bursting at the seams, waiting to see me. This time she wasn't. That was heartbreaking in itself. I showered, popped in to see her, still sleeping. I unpacked, popped in to see her, still sleeping. So I slept, very restless, worried, fitful sleep, woke up, tired, popped into her room to see her, still asleep, showered, got ready, still asleep, had my breakfast, she's still asleep. And then the carer said, right, we're going to try and get her awake. And I thought, my God, has she actually gone? Has she passed? No, I could see just slightly that she was breathing. They woke her up, and it took her about 10 minutes to register that I was there. And then the tears flowed on both sides. Coming back to feeling safe, I was feeling consciously safe. I felt good. My data registered that. But when I got here, there was a part of me that stepped into a very childlike state, a very unresourced state of fear and worry. And in trauma terms, we would call this dissociation. I kind of left my body a little bit. I didn't even really know this had happened because it was such an old pattern and such an old Pavlovian reflex that I hadn't noticed actually that this was what was happening. And then when I looked at my data, it was my nervous system was in a state of disarray. And this continued for the day, and it continued that night, and it continued for the next day, and it continued to the next day. It continued and continued. And I was kind of trying to work it out. And I would say, a little bit of unconscious unsafety. I was using my tools, I was breathing, I was meditating, I was going to the gym, I was practicing humming, I was practicing sighing, I was eating well, I was cutting back the caffeine, my 1 cup a day. I was journaling, I was doing all of the things. And I'm going to share tools and techniques with you as we go through this series. And can I also say, probably should have said this at the beginning, but this is not a substitute for medical help. If any of this is landing for you, is resonating, my podcast is not a substitute for medical help or therapy. If you are going through your own storms, if you are noticing that you are in a state of trauma, in a state of freeze, in a state of high agitation, these are the things that can show up in the safety continuum from unsafety to safety. And I'm going to share more about that. But if you are noticing that you are not in a good space, go and seek out the relevant help. Go and seek out help, therapist, medical help. This isn't a substitute, but I'm just sharing from my lived experience, and there may be something that I say that lands for you. But what has happened during the time when I first got here, and this continued for 5 days and nights, by the way, couldn't sleep, feeling very agitated, falling back into some old habits of, I've got to get to the gym. I've got to get to the gym. And it's actually quite funny because what happened is I went to the gym. I did exercises that I know I shouldn't do. I've got an old injury in my left knee, And I did things involving jumping from quite height to get down from the pull-up station. And I re-injured my knee and it blew up. And I did it again, second day, with full awareness that I was injuring my knee, but I'm determined to do what I need to do because this is going to keep me safe. And in the old days, I'd go out running along the seawall, but I can't do that now because mangroves have grown. There's lots of sand flies because of the rainfall. It's swampy because of the traffic now in Guyana because they've discovered oil. So it's not comfortable to run along the seafront. It's fumy, petrol fumes, sand flies. Can't see the sea anymore because of the mangroves. The universe. I'm laughing while I'm recording this because the universe has conspired. Marina, you're not going to use your old coping strategies of running at 100 miles an hour so that you don't have to feel. And this is what happens when we are unconsciously unsafe. It starts to drive old behaviors. Do you notice that little stammer there? I used to stammer. Little old pattern. I couldn't speak. We weren't allowed to. So when you are unconsciously unsafe, you start to run old patterns of behaviors, old circuits of behavior, old neurological pathways that you used to keep you in survival mode. And I was in survival mode, as evidenced by my amazing data from this beautiful ring, which I've been wearing for 5 years. So I'm very well acquainted with my data. And my lovely daughter, when the old ring died after 4 years, she bought me another one for my Christmas, last Christmas. So I have 5 years of working with data, but I also listen. But I wasn't listening in that state of, I was a 5-year-old. Because this home holds a lot of trauma. My story is messy. I'll come back to the story, but let's finish the 4 categories. Consciously safe when I left the UK, landing here, agitation, my old patterns, seeing my mother, feeling the feelings. My bedroom is now my late father's bedroom. That's where I sleep. The house is a shell of its former glory. It used to be a beautiful home. It's been stripped bare, decades of carers. It's not what it used to be. Some of the rooms are in a state of dilapidation, and my mother is deteriorating. There are lots of memories here. My nervous system went into unsafety. After a few days of this, couldn't go to the gym. I was forced to slow down. So I thought I'm going to do some exercise at home. But what then happened was I started getting a fever. The universe is saying, no, you're not going to do the things you used to do. Can't even go over to the neighbor's pool and swim 50 lengths, which is what I did before the fever came on. So for the last 3 days, I've had a kind of febrile, viral up and down fever, lying down, high temperature, not able to do the things I would normally do, feeling pretty unwell. And yesterday and today, I started to emerge. But during this time of not feeling well, with the knee blown up, can't move like I used to, body not able to do the things it used to do, it's used to doing, I was forced to be still and listen. And I landed in the 3rd category of consciously unsafe. Consciously unsafe. And this is when we have the realization, we start paying attention, we start listening to the body. Marina, you're not sleeping. You're more irritable. You're more tetchy. You're starting to feel angry and frustrated with your mother. You had an argument with your brother. Because siblings, and you're in this caring situation, the family takes the hit. So my brother and I had a huge bust up, and then we apologized the next day, but it was raw. I noticed my daughter was calling me, telling me about her work situation, but I wasn't in a position to listen. I was in survival mode, couldn't get my breathing down into my belly, but I was aware of it now. I was aware. So what did I do? I rested. I forced myself to rest. I forced myself to listen. Yesterday, I actually organized a therapy session and sat with my therapist. But by then, actually, I was feeling pretty good, and I was able to. I had by then navigated my way back to feeling consciously safe again. But I had gone from this journey through consciously safe to unconsciously unsafe to consciously unsafe. Yep, I know. This is not great. I know it's not great, but now I can start to apply my tools. I can get the help on board. I can bring the support on board. I even sat and did some singing with my mom and some drumming yesterday, and I loved doing that. And just seeing her joy and seeing shades of my old mother. She used to be a singer and a dancer and a drummer, and seeing her joy and seeing that come back, I was able to return to consciously safe. So can you see the journey? And I have to go very deep in my journey because my trauma lies in a very deep place. So if you don't know my story, and some of this is in the public domain, I've written 4 books and I talk quite openly about this in some of my books, particularly the last one, Finding Inner Safety. My 4th book, I talk about the complex trauma, complex PTSD. I talk about the years in and out of hospital with bipolar disorder. I talk about an awakening that happened when I was in my 30s, back in the 1990s, showing my age now, but it's a long journey. So I talk about my journey back to safety. I mean, this journey here, it's only taken me 5 or 6 days, but my early years were very difficult. My childhood was very difficult. My teens were very difficult. There were suicide attempts. My 20s were very difficult, even though I was high functioning, psychologists would say, high functioning. I was gaining qualifications, really good jobs. My career was taking off, even while I was imploding inside, until I got to the point of recognition, of consciously knowing that I had been living my life in a way that wasn't sustainable. I was in survival mode, consciously unsafe, and I needed to do life differently. And that's when I started a journey. Some people hate the word journey, by the way, and I agree that it's overworked, but I'm going to use it because it was a journey of traveling back from Australia. So there was a journey there. And coming back to the UK, I'd had some kind of awakening experience. And I will talk about that in one of the episodes. But today, let's just mention it in passing. I'd gone out to Australia after these 4 years in and out of hospital with various clinical labels and medication. Gone out to Australia, had the realization of why I'd ended up in the place that I was in the state that I was in, consciously unsafe. And the realization that I needed to do life differently. Got on that plane back from Brisbane to the UK, walked out of a marriage, walked out of a really good job, actually released several stability anchors at the same time. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you do that, but that's the way I needed to do it. But started doing life differently. Started meditating, started doing yoga, started running a lot. But I'd have to say that in the 30 odd years, my profession really took off from that point. The biggest thing I have learned to do is to be still, to listen. And for me, I have to share with you that one of my biggest challenges is learning how to be still, learning how to be restful. And if any of you are students of human design or the gene keys, and I will have guests on my show, on my podcast, where they will share their expertise about these disciplines, the human design, which I've studied a little. I mean, I'm such a novice, but gene keys, I'm passionate about gene keys. But one of the things I have learned from these disciplines is that within my makeup, within my DNA, there is a huge amount of agitation and restlessness. It is really hard for me to be still. But right now, as I'm speaking to you, I have managed to access, even in the messiness of my environment, I have been able to access a level of stillness, which is a gift. And when I arrived here a week ago, it was really hard because I was thrown back into old patterns. Little Marina, who was extremely scared in this same house, there was violence. I loved my parents, but they came from such poverty. Their ancestors traveled from India to Guyana in the 19th century, and they landed here as indentured slaves. They didn't have much. They lived in little huts. My mother lived in a mud hut with her siblings, 9 siblings. Her father was an alcoholic, a fisherman. Her mother was a very gentle soul, but her father, if he came down the road singing after a day's work, their hearts sank because they knew they wouldn't eat. They knew that he would have spent his day's earnings in the rum shop. That's what they call them, these bars and their pubs. They didn't use that word in Guyana. Rum shop, playing dominoes, slapping the dominoes on the table while drinking bottles of rum. No wonder he died of cirrhosis very young. But if they heard that, they knew that they wouldn't have food. So my mother came from very impoverished background, roots. My father the same. His parents were moderately more wealthy. They worked their way out of indentured slavery and bought the rice mills and a village bus called Sushila. So my grandfather on my paternal side was very tenacious, and my father was the same. But my father's trauma was even greater than my mother's. I mean, there was violence in my mother's home. She watched her father beating her mother, and my mother herself was beaten by her eldest brother. She still has the scars. But my father came from even more violence. So if you fast forward epigenetically to me, my DNA, I carry, and there's science that shows that we carry the trauma of generations that have come before us. My parents tried their hardest, but my father carried a lot of anger, and there was a lot of anger and violence in this home that me and my siblings were not only subjected to. Some of that you might say is the West Indian way, because Guyana is a little country in the northeastern tip of South America, but it's part of the Caribbean, part of the CARICOM, the Caribbean community, if you know your geography. And if you don't, go and look it up, because Guyana is a fascinating place. But the culture here is fascinating and dark and murky. I would say dangerous. I was born in the UK, but moved here when I was 7. And we would go to school with guards. We had guards in our house and, living downstairs in a hut, a security hut. And we had guard dogs who lived outside, Dobermans, Alsatians, Rottweilers, dogs chosen for their personalities because we needed to be kept safe. This home that holds some of the roots of my safety, my ancestral roots of safety. It is not an easy place to inhabit, but after 5 or 6 days or nights, I found my safety. And I last night slept really well. The night before that, slept well. My immune system has recovered. I'm able to laugh with my mother. I'm able to hold her and hug her and find compassion for her. Because this is what happens when we find inner safety. Not only do we sleep, but we are able to extend that vitality that we wake up with in the morning to the people we love. We love them, but we can't eat a whole one. It's one of my friends says this. I love my daughter, but I can't eat a whole one. My friend Jackie, I'll have to have her on the podcast as guest, because she's an expert in human design. But I'm hoping that the noise isn't getting through here, because now we've got chopping and machetes and electric drills and all sorts going on. But I feel this is the universe saying it's time to draw this to a close. But the fact of the matter is that when we find inner safety, when we're able to sit in the discomfort, in the mulch, and be with whatever's going on in the external world and still sleep at night and then wake up with the amazing energy I'm feeling right now, and I hope you can feel it too, then we can extend ourselves in compassion to the world around us, the people we love that don't always like, and we rage with them sometimes and we argue, but we're also able to send it out into the world, whether it's our teams, the companies we work in, or the world at large, where there is so much strife and trauma, big T trauma, real trauma, heartache. But we have to start with ourselves. We have to be the change. And for me, one of the biggest gifts of this week, it's been an amazing week so far, and I leave in a few days' time. I'm not in a hurry to get out of here. I ain't in no hurry. This has been gold. And I have found a level of self-compassion within me, but also compassion for those around me, the carers who aren't trained carers, but they have so much love and compassion and humor in them. And I'm going to take this back to my work in the UK. And we're living in a world right now where the wellness world is flooded with retreats and festivals and workshops and podcasts and everything. Everyone's doing the do when it comes to wellness. There's so much advice out there, but actually sitting in the discomfort of our own personal lived experience day after day and being able to be with it without resorting to the phones, the social media, the this, the that. There's so much distraction. Being able to sit in it, which is what I've had to do this week. I haven't been able to exercise like I normally do or do the things that I normally do. I've had to sit in it and find stillness, and that is the greatest gift that I am taking away. And I'm offering to you, if you can find every morning when you wake up, don't reach for your phone. Just lie there and listen. Put your hand over your heart. Put the other hand over your belly. Just listen to your breath. Listen to it. Where is it? Is it in your chest? Listen to the mind. Don't get identified with the noise of your mind. I'm going to talk about that in the next episode. This mind is so noisy. It's so punitive. It's so have to do, must do, should do. It's so you're not good enough. You can't do the podcast. Can't do it. You're not good enough. No one will listen. But if you could just keep coming back to the vertical axis, this is what my therapist, amazing therapist I have, she talks about the vertical alignment, the breath. The breath is your best medicine. It is the guide. It's the doorway to stillness. It is the doorway to safety. And there is a vertical axis in the nervous system. Talk about that more in the next episode. But there's a vertical axis, actually, which goes from the vagus nerve, from the perineum, that space between your genitals and the anus, that perineum, that little platform The vagus nerve runs through that all the way through, up through the body to the top of the head, the fontanelle, where as a baby, newborn baby, that area that is really soft. If you're watching me, you can see I'm touching the top of my head. But if you're listening, I'm trying to make that visual. The perineum, the space between the anus and the genitals, all the way up through the body to the top of the head. And if you breathe, 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 send the breath out through the perineum, back in through the perineum, up through to the top of the head, you are accessing that vertical alignment from which the core of your inner safety comes. More about this in the next episode. Look, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. It's been challenging with all the noise. My nervous system has bounced all over the place, but I have landed in this place of such stillness and inner safety. I hope you can feel it. I hope you can hear it. I hope you can receive it. This is medicine for you. It's medicine for me. And I'm now going to stop, but I'm going to go out and give my mum an enormous hug and thank her. I'm going to go and thank the carers who are so patient. They're so caring. There's so much compassion. And they teach me. They teach me. Even though they haven't been taught themselves. There's so much love. So I'm wishing you all love, so much compassion and kindness for your journey, and deepest inner safety, and deepest stillness, rest, and sleep tonight. I'll be back. Terminator.